They say there are two things that are certain in life, and that is death and taxes. But I want to add another one to that. Uh, the speed of the NFL season. I feel like just last week it was week one, and here we are now in the final week of the regular season. And there are a lot of key matchups that are taking place, but there's also a lot of teams that were surprisingly good, but also surprisingly bad. So I think it's only fair that we talk about those teams and those key matchups. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Raridan. And first and foremost, I want to wish everybody a happy new year. Hopefully everybody was safe and had a great time with the new year. The new year comes, some things never change, and that is the NFL playoffs. And we're going to talk about the standings. But first, I want to introduce my co-host here today. First, we got Ed Smith.
Hook 'em, y'all.
And secondly, we've got Thaddeus Lloyd.
Heyo.
Well, guys, we're just about there. The playoffs are just about set, and there are some matchups here that really need to be talked about. But before we talk about those matchups, I want to go over the current playoff standings or the seedings per se. Like I said, some things never change. Kansas City Chiefs are the number one overall seed in the AFC. They are sitting at 15-1 right now, so they're pretty much the number one team in the NFL. Or on the flip side, the NFC right now, the number one seed is the Detroit Lions, and that can change. Dun dun dun. We will definitely be talking about that. But back to the AFC, the number two seed right now is the Buffalo Bills, and the number three seed is the Baltimore Ravens. Fourth seed, rounding out the division winners at the moment, is the Houston Texans. So there's your 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the AFC. Your wild card seeds, you got the Steelers at fifth, Chargers at 6, and the Denver Broncos at the 7th seed. Those are subjected to change with this last week because there are still a lot of playoff implications. Over on the NFC, as I mentioned, Detroit at the 1 seed, followed by the Eagles at 2, the Rams at 3, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4. Those are the division winners. And then you look at the 5th seed, the first wild card, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Washington Commanders at the 6th seed, and the last wild card spot to the Green Bay Packers at the 7th seed. Ed is happy there. There's a lot of fumbling around here that could happen, Ed, because not all of the seeds are yet set in stone. You see a lot of things changing within both these wild card races and divisional races.
It becomes a shell game at this point. For the most part, all the playoff spots are taken. It's just where does it all line up? Like in the NFC, the only spot that's really up for grabs is the NFC South division title, but everything else is pretty well set in stone. It's just where does that fall? We'll be talking about the uh, that first seed and how that's going to be impacted by this week. So, spoiler alert there. Uh, and on the AFC side, there can be some shifting, a little back and forth action. It just depends on who is really up for playing a playoff type game in the last game of the season when you know that you're going to make the playoff. It's just how do you get that home game? Do you wind up being on the road? What's the importance of that to your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And what team you may want to play, because that is also important, because some of them, the higher seeds, are set. and some of them are just really dangerous teams that you just don't want to play right now. One of the most noticeable teams that aren't on this list, and I'm sorry that I have to do this, Thaddeus, but that's the defending NFC champs. That's the San Francisco 49ers. And Thaddeus, briefly ask you here, especially being a Niners fan, what went wrong for the Niners this year, and why are they not in the playoffs?
Well, there's the stat that's been thrown around a lot recently. I think it mainly is attributed to Barry. If you know, I cannot say his last name on here, unfortunately. Um, he's satirical. But he threw around that since 2002, I believe, the Niners every year have either missed the playoffs or made the NFC Championship game. And especially under Kyle Shanahan, they have every year that they've made the playoffs, they've made the NFC Championship game. But then every year that they haven't made the playoffs, it's mainly due to injuries. This year, I would say they had a lot of substantial injuries. Like Trent Williams couldn't stay healthy the entire year; he was on and off. You had Dre Greenlaw from last year's Super Bowl tore his Achilles, comes back for one game, and then exits for the rest of the season with another injury, basically. Um, and then you just had regression from the rest of the offense. Brock Purdy not looking quite as good. George Kittle still had an All-Pro season. He was the best player on the entire team on the year by far. But it was just another year where injuries hit them, and they just couldn't come back from that basically. And now we're entering into a year where they might pay Brock Purdy, but they might not. They could wait out another year. They still have another year on that contract. But it was just another injury riddled season, and that's pretty much all I can chalk up to it. They might have one more shot next year with this roster, but it did not look pretty. Uh, from it wasn't just the injuries; it was just like I said, the regression. Debo Samuel has not looked the same since his 2021 All Pro season, so it's not looking great, but it's not the worst possible scenario. So they'll just have to come back healthier next year.
Yeah, it was definitely very unfortunate due to all the injuries that they sustained coming from last year going into this year and this year's injuries. I mean, when you lose Christian McCaffrey, who's one of the best offensive weapons in the NFL, that's definitely tough. You're Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, who signed a massive contract. He tore his ACL. So they were very plagued with the injury bug, and you never want to see that in the NFL. Yeah, Thaddeus?
Yeah, and then also it was just weird off-field stuff that happened before the season that
Yeah.
kind of felt like it jinxed it up.
Yeah.
Like you had Trent Williams' daughter died,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Travarius Ward, his daughter passed away as well, which was really sad. And then of course Ricky Pearsall got shot,
Yeah.
managed to survive and come halfway through the season, which is a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of weird stuff that happened and unfortunate, very sad things that happened. So it wasn't. They had a couple good games, but overall, just it wasn't meant to be this year.
Yeah, those seasons do happen, and like I said, it is unfortunate for sure. So, but if I know the Niners, they will be back. They do have a lot of talent and a lot to give. So, but they are one of the most known names on there that's not on this list. The Rams are probably the most quiet 10-6 team out there. To be honest, I didn't even realize that they were leading the division right now, but they are. So, shout out to the Rams, but. Let's go ahead and jump into these key matchups here in the final week. First one being the Cincinnati Bengals going into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. What I think is the craziest thing about this game is the way that the season started for both these two teams. It was polar opposites. Bengals could barely win a game. They started out, I want to say, 1-4. Steelers actually started out as one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And now they could potentially end the season only one game away from each other. It's the tale of two halves. That is the NFL at its finest. Is a tale of two halves, and the Bengals are notorious for that. They never start out great. They start out very slow, and then they finish hot. Well, they are finishing more than just hot right now. They are a team that if they make the playoffs, I don't think anyone wants to face them. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are the best 1-2 punch in the NFL right now. Joe Burrow has a big argument to be made for his case for MVP for what he's done. He will not win it, but just for what he's done. And Jamar Chase, right now, on path to be the fifth Triple Crown winner for wide receiver in the NFL, first since Cooper Kupp did it a couple years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. So Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow having a tremendous year. And I don't think much is going to change going into this game. I think that the Steelers are on a 3-game losing streak, and this is the last team they want to play to try to win a game at the end of the year. Granted, the Steelers have already clinched the playoffs. The seeding can change because if they do win this game and Baltimore loses, Pittsburgh jumps into the 3 seed. But if they lose this game and the Chargers win, well, the Steelers could drop from the 5th seed to the 6th seed because they do hold the tiebreaker against the Broncos. And they do hold a tiebreaker against the Chargers, too, that if they do finish tied, that's why the Steelers will get the 5th seed versus the 6th seed. So a lot can change here for Pittsburgh. Bengals, on the other hand, they need to win. They cannot afford a loss. They need a lot of things to happen for them to make the playoffs, and that starts with a win, a Denver loss, who they beat last week, and a Miami loss or a tie. And all those scenarios could very well happen. The Broncos, though, do face the Chiefs, who are going to be playing their second stringers. So there's a lot to look at just in this game alone, guys. But and if I were to ask you guys who's got the momentum going into this game, it's clear cut. It is the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're playing for a lot more. And I say that because, yes, they want to make the playoffs, whereas the Steelers clinch. But the Steelers, I think they're fine where they're at because right now they're just going to be facing off against Houston. And I'm not saying Houston's a bad team, but the Steelers don't want to play Baltimore. The Steelers don't want to play Buffalo. Let's just kind of stay idle. So, Ed, what are your thoughts going into this game?
This is this is a game in which the Bengals know who they are, the Steelers know who they are, and this is the time of year that Mike Tomlin coaches too. And it is slow the game down. It is let the clock run. It is don't let your opponent, in this case Cincinnati, get off to fast starts and start flinging the ball all over the place. This is Pittsburgh's basically bread and butter. This is how Mike Tomlin has built his team to play at this time of the year. Whereas Cincinnati, they're more high flying. They are the number one passing offense in the league. But on the flip side, you've got Pittsburgh, who is not that great, but the best defense that they could have against the pass is a good running game and continue to bleed that clock. And that's what I would anticipate Mike Tomlin to do, especially since Pittsburgh has kind of had a difficult time with the passing game over the past month. Got to lean on the run game. That's the only thing that's going to get you through. And for that reason, I'm thinking that Cincinnati, there's just something about them that Joe Burrow is not going to let them lose. And that's the type of quarterback that he is. And it's hard for me to say that Pittsburgh's going to walk away with this, but I have to at this point. Cincinnati, as good as they are offensively and explosive as they are offensively, I don't think that they are going to be able to overcome this game plan that Pittsburgh's going to throw at them because there's not going to be enough there to let Cincinnati, just run away with this because that's really the only way that they beat teams at this point.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off that, Thaddeus, I think one of the biggest kind of stats that pop out to me is you look at Cincinnati being an offensive powerhouse where the Steelers really aren't, and they haven't been for some time since Big Ben retired. But Steelers have won 4 out of the last 5 games, actually outscoring the Bengals 157 to 116. I mean, that's got to shock you, right, Thaddeus?
Yeah, it does a little bit. But again, it is NFC North football, so it's the expected where the unexpected happens. Um, so it is a little bit because the Bengals are high flying, but now they have Russell Wilson, and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Now the Steelers are on a current 3-game losing streak, so this does make it a little bit more interesting. And the Bengals need help to get in. However, they had these really just fluky losses earlier in the season, which have really hurt them. And I think they were like 1-4, 0-4 to start the season, and they had like a 8 or 5% chance to make the playoffs. Now, only one team I believe has done it, and I believe that was the 2012 Chiefs, if I remember correctly. But they can make it with a little bit of help, and it's entirely possible for them to make it because that Joe Burrow is just unbelievable. If his team didn't have a mid or losing record, he would probably be top 3 MVP uh, in the race right now. So it's unbelievable what the offense is doing. However, I would question one big key component to the offense is Chase Brown. If he is not available to go, Khalil Herbert, he's a good runner, but not quite as good, pass catching as Chase Brown was because he was putting up unbelievable numbers. I think he had a touchdown in almost every single game this year. So if he isn't good to go, this this Cincinnati offense will be hindered a little bit. So just with that, but Joe Burrow, I feel like can will his team to win any moment. Like that Ravens Bengals game this earlier this year, whew, that was a crazy one. That was probably the best Thursday night game this year. So it's pretty tough for me to decide who it's going to be, but I'm I'm gonna have to. But they also need some help to get in. So I'm gonna go with the Bengals here on this one. I just the Steelers already clinched it. The Bengals are gonna need some help. They're gonna try to within their power, to get in. So
Matthew, let me ask you something. Do you think the weather's going to be a factor in this game?
They're both used to playing in colder weather. I know it's going to be around 22 degrees come game time. But I mean, Cincinnati, I know it may not get as cold as Pittsburgh does sometimes, but I think that it's Joe Cool, right? That's his nickname. I think that he'll be just fine in a cold weather game. So I don't think it plays much of an impact. But tell you what, though, when you get hit in cold weather, it hurts more. So we'll see how some of these players can do. If you get a TJ Watt sack on Joe Burrow, he may feel a stinger a little bit more. So, but here's the thing: Russell Wilson, uh, he just keeps making more and more mistakes. Joe Burrow's not. So at this time of the year, you can't be making these mistakes, and that's why I'm going to give the Bengals the edge, is because Burrow's not making these mistakes as much as Russell Wilson is, and Russell Wilson's making them at the worst time. It's like the worst possible mistake you could have, fumbling it on the 1 yard line, throwing interceptions in the end zone. Stuff like that is not going to help you win games because you're also missing out on 3 points, if not 7, if you aren't making those mistakes. So that leads me to give the Bengals the edge here. I'll give it a score 21-17. Ed?
I'm going to take the Steelers. I think they're going to be more resilient this time of year, and I'll put them at a little bit lower score, uh, probably 24-21.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, defense is eventually going to make its mark. So, Thaddeus, I know you picked Bengals to win. I don't know if you want to drop a score prediction. You can if you want.
oh yeah, it's got to be colder weather. I'll say 27-21.
All right. Next game does have playoff implications for one team. For the other, it's possibly the final game for an all-time great quarterback, and that is the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. There's going to be a lot of storyline in this game, and none of it's going to have to do with the Dolphins making the playoffs, because Aaron Rodgers is a walking newspaper. I mean, or a walking news story wherever he is at, whatever he says, it's front page news. And this possibly being his last game, that's what's really going to be talked about this whole game. Aaron Rodgers has had a heck of a career. I think his biggest mistake was choosing the New York Jets, but I'll let him, tell you that. But Rodgers really has had such a great career, just unfortunately where he's been at the last couple years. One being an injury plagued year, but and the other one being this year. It's not the best way to really go out, but Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he probably doesn't care. We'll talk more about that here, but I want to talk about the game itself because Miami has won 14 of the last 17 games, dating all the way back to 2016. Uh, and when you think about it, it's funny because the Jets swept the series in 2015 with Ryan Fitzmagic at quarterback. All right. Maybe it has something to do with that Harvard degree or the beard, however you want to put it. But the Dolphins, the Dolphins are lucky to even be in this situation of possibly making the playoffs because Tua's been hurt. They've dealt with a lot of injuries as well. The Jets just had such a disappointing year, Ed. We thought maybe the whole acquisition of Devontae Adams was maybe going to change things. It doesn't matter what the Jets do. They're just a bad franchise, and they'll be lucky if Rodgers or Devontae Adams is there next year. And I mean, they may not even want them. I don't know. But Thaddeus, when you look at this game, can the Jets play spoiler in your opinion and make it to where the Dolphins don't make the playoffs?
The Jets have looked absolutely abysmal for except for out of 2 games this season. Once was against the Jacoby Brissett Patriots, and then the other one was a surprise win.
The Texans.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
There it is. I almost forgot about that one. Tells you the state of the Texans, really.
Yeah.
But they can play spoiler, I believe, and for one reason only. Aaron Rodgers has 499 career passing touchdowns. He needs one more for 500 to join the 500 club. So you bet he'll be getting at least 2 passing touchdowns this game, at least. So, and I do believe because where did that defense go the first couple months? Salah leaves. Where did that defense go? They showed up, like you said, against the Texans that one time. That was literally been it. So I do believe they probably can show up again. I mean, the Dolphins, they're. I'm surprised they still have a shot at the playoffs. I just checked that. I'm like, how is this possible? So it really tells you how wild the AFC really is. But for the Dolphins, they still have a shot, but they're very wobbly. They are like the Texans, where they might look like a good team, but they're really frauds as far as the current moment goes. So, because they lost to the Texans, the Dolphins also lost to the Texans. So it's going to be pretty hard for this game. History will tell you that the Dolphins will win against the Jets, but like you said before, the Dolphins have lost 3 games at New York the past couple of seasons. So who knows? And it's cold weather. We know the Dolphins struggle in cold weather games, and yeah, this might be an upset unless the Dolphins really try. But we got two kind of sort of cursed franchises. The Jets can't have a good quarterback season, and the Dolphins can't play in cold weather. So we're going to see which curse cancels each other out in this game, so to speak. And yeah, that's gonna be it. So there is a decent chance the Jets can pull off this upset.
Ed, last week I heard during the Jets game, I want to say an announcer said that out of the 4 major sports in North America, the Jets have the longest drought going to the playoffs. They are such a tarnished franchise, and now that you see the rumors with Garrett Wilson wanting out, they may not even bring back Devontae Adams or Aaron Rodgers. What are the Jets doing, and where do they go from here?
this is a situation where Woody Johnson. Why did you even buy this team if you weren't going to let it do its thing? This He's very Jerry Jones in that aspect, trying to be very much oversighting of everything. He just doesn't want to be in front of the cameras every 5 seconds. So there's that part of it. Um, as far as uh, as far as the Aaron Rodgers portion of this, yes, he's sitting at 499. He wants to get to 500. Guess who caught the touchdown passes 300 and 400 for Aaron Rodgers?
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams. So just keeping that part of it alive. I think they both walk off into the sunset after this game. That's just my opinion. Because there's really nothing more for Aaron Rodgers to play for because he knows he's not going to do anything with the Jets. And Devontae Adams, he's got other stuff going on. I don't I don't know if he is that guy at this point in his career. So he he could bounce around a little bit, kind of like when we saw Randy Moss go to San Francisco, when we saw Terrell Owens wind up in Seattle. Those type of odd placement things that you don't necessarily uh, expect a player to end his career at. Jerry Rice in Seattle. Who saw that coming? You know, certainly not me.
Yeah.
Um, so there is that part of it. The other part of it is Aaron Rodgers has such pride that he wants to end his career as the all-time leader in QBR. He won't say it,
Yeah.
but we know that he wants to have that one thing that we all know that he is better than everybody else. And right now, he is still the number one leader in QBR in NFL history. Right behind him currently is Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, but Aaron Rodgers still has that up on those two guys. So he wants something to walk out on that says that he's the greatest ever. And I think that this is it.
Yeah, I do think that the Jets do play spoiler here, and Aaron Rodgers gets a victory in his possible last game. So I'm gonna go Jets here, 27-14. Actually, I don't know why, but I just feel like they're gonna score that much. So Thaddeus,
Yeah, that's a pretty good score. That'd be yeah. I'll go Jets 24-17.
Ed,
The Dolphins absolutely cannot move around as soon as they pull out those jackets. So
nope.
uh, I'm actually going to bring it a little lower. We're going to see 17-13.
Yeah, and really quick, just because we're talking about the Dolphins, what's going on with Tyreek Hill? I mean, seeing some of the stuff he's posting online, the Happy New Year's tweet to the Chiefs the other day. Are we seeing another Antonio Brown developing right now? Because it's really weird.
He's been sending he's been trying to be like this social media uh, communicator. Let's keep it cryptic, but let's tell everybody this thing that's going to stir up controversy. So they're talking about me because it's all about me. I've got to have people talking to me about what I'm doing. And that's really all I get from this.
Yeah.
About a week ago or so, a couple of weeks ago, he was like, Coach, let me run. And people were taking it as, let him run off to the Chiefs or let him leave the team or let him run as in open the plays up for him to get the ball down the field. It was so cryptic that I just can't pay attention to it anymore.
Instead of trying to communicate online, how about you go communicate with like your 20 kids? I mean, he's worse than Sean Kemp in the NBA. I mean, let's get our priorities straight. All right.
Well, we know he can outrun them. So
He can outrun a lot of people, but yeah. All right, on to probably the most exciting game of the week.
Can I make a comment? Actually,
Yeah.
it was funny. I was just reading, and It's crazy what's happened with the Tyreek, because I remember he was saying some stuff like this was right after, remember, he got arrested before the game earlier in the
Uh-huh.
season, and he's like, I remember hearing some stuff, and he says he wanted to be a cop,
Cop. Yeah.
or he wanted to be an OnlyFans person. I was like,
This is Antonio Brown at its
this is, yeah, this
finest.
is Antonio Brown, and I get the feeling, like Ed, you were saying about the attention, because he's not producing the same as he was. He was voted by the players. So the NFL does their top 100. He was voted by the players as the number one player. This year, he's not even making a Pro Bowl in front of Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Judy's making a Pro Bowl, and Tyreek Hill isn't. That's all you need to know about this season. So maybe he is pulling an Antonio Brown, and we'll just see him, deuces and, streak, literally streak off the field this time.
Oh,
So
He's
there's
going to
another
take
Pro
down
Bowl
his lower
snub.
waist too.
There's another Pro Bowl snub that we'll mention here in a little bit too.
So what you're saying is that it's like the Madden curse. So the players poll is really the curse, and that's why he's not doing good this year.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. Alrighty, on to the game that I was talking about. This is the premier matchup. This is Sunday Night Football.
Last game of the regular season.
It doesn't get better than this, and it is to decide who is the 1 seed, who is the 5 seed, and that is the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. This is going to be a slugfest. We've had some very good games this year, just like Thaddeus mentioned. The Bengals and Ravens Thursday Night Football, actually both matchups. Even the Ravens and Chiefs Week 1, we've seen some really good matchups. This could top it because of these two teams and how great they are and what they're battling for. They're battling for the number 1 seed. And whoever doesn't get the number 1 seed is going to be one of the best number 5 seeds in all time because both these teams are two of the top in the NFL. And I talked about it in my intro. There is a team out there that has surprised everyone, and that is none other than the Minnesota Vikings. We saw what they did come draft night where they got J.J. McCarthy. He was going to be their future. He had to have surgery, and here comes Sam Darnold, who no longer sees ghosts, but only sees his receivers and is throwing dimes to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and it doesn't hurt when you have Aaron Jones behind you too. So the Minnesota Vikings have shocked a lot of people, not only on offense, but their defense too. Brian Flores, he may not be a good head coach, but he is one hell of a defensive coordinator. And I think this was such a perfect fit for him in Minnesota. Fortunately, it was so good that he's probably going to get taken away to become a mediocre head coach again. But he is a great defensive coordinator, and I think he has a lot of respect needs to go towards him in where the Vikings are this year. The Detroit Lions, on the other hand, Jared Goff has done great things for them. I think for them, they are dealing with injuries as they lost David Montgomery for the year, but they're still looking impressive. I mean, they were able to, what they did the Niners. I know the Niners are a walking wounded team, but they still were able to pull off the victory. Lions are very exciting. This game, it could go any way. The Lions have won 5 of the last 6 and 4 in a row against the Vikings, so that kind of wants to tell you, well, if history is shown, it's going to go the Lions' way. But Ed, this is a tough one because the Vikings have shown a lot of resilience this year and proved a lot of people wrong. Can they do it one more time this game?
They could do it one more time. This is one of the most prolific scoring offenses that we have in the NFL at this point. Uh, so right now they're averaging, what is this? They're number 1 in the league at almost 34 points a game. I mean, that is a lot of points. Last I saw it, was like one of only 3 or 4 teams that have scored more than 40 points half a dozen times in a season. I mean, that's insane. Now, what I anticipate though is there's going to be a lot of relying on Jared Goff in the short passing game because David Montgomery's out. You don't want to overextend Jahmyr Gibbs, but you really want to put this game away. And that 1-2 punch at running back for Detroit has really been their calling card, even though they do have such explosive players in the pass game, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Sam Laporta. And this offensive scheme just seems to scheme open everybody. And Jared Goff has been just a just a great trigger man because he is not having to do too much. One of the issues that I think he may have had before coming to Detroit is he was being asked to do too much. He was being asked to be a, God forbid, Kirk Cousins that Sean McVay was used to working with in Washington. He was being asked to be an Aaron Rodgers type, controlling the offense, 100% at the line of scrimmage. I don't think Jared Goff is really having to do that. He's doing a great job of putting the ball where it needs to be and not in harm's way, keeping the turnovers at a minimum, and just all those pieces put together. It's very hard to stop when you keep running the ball. You throw the ball efficiently and without harm. You have explosive players that can take those easy throws and turn them into long touchdowns. Those those are really great things for Detroit to be leaning on. The only thing I have concerns about this week is the fact that this is the number one turnover takeaway team in the NFL, and I'm interested to see which side of the field wins that battle.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the battle for sure. And Thaddeus, this is the first time in NFL history where two teams with 14 wins will play each other in the regular season. No one had this on their bingo card, at least for the Vikings. Detroit, on the other hand, 14-2. Have they had one of the greatest turnarounds in recent NFL history?
Yeah, they they definitely have. Ever since, thankfully, Sheila Ford stuck with her her coaches, her whole system there. And midway through 2021, Dan Campbell, he lost the majority of his games the first two seasons there. And I was like, oh, is he really the guy? Well, she was like, I'm sticking with it. Things take time, and patience definitely paid out for her and for the organization as a whole. And now it's especially with Ben Johnson and biting kneecaps Dan Campbell. This team has turned into a juggernaut despite this defense probably being the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL with all those injuries. They have like two or three starters left. Um, but that looks like that's all they need because this offense is just looking incredible. I mean, so many weapons, a top 3 offensive line, and a resurrected Jared Goff, and it's absolutely incredible. And now they're facing another great story with the Vikings, and like what you were saying with Brian Flores, who I believe is a pure defensive coordinator. I don't think he should get another head coaching job, though some people might look at him. So who knows on that department? But as a defensive coordinator, he's really good. And he's turned this defensive around. It's basically the same defensive roster as last year, but he's taking a bunch of people who are almost no names. They lost Hunter, their defensive lineman, to Houston. They're still putting up great numbers with basically nobodies. It's incredible. So it's two great stories. And like what you were saying, it's two 14 win teams. I had the Lions winning 14 games. I did not expect the Vikings at all. This was my surprise team this year for me. I was not expecting this at all. I didn't think a lot of people did either, even even Vikings fans. So it's been a very pleasant surprise. And what's crazier is since both these teams have 14 wins, the loser of this game is going to be a fifth seed. 14 win fifth seed, which is
Yeah.
crazy. We've seen a couple 11, maybe even 12, but 14 win 5 seed is a little ridiculous. Um, However, this is very important, not just because the winner gets the 1 seed and the bye, but because the loser has to play the 4th seed. And who's going to be the 4th seed? I believe we're going to talk about this later. But the 4th seed is potentially going to be Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay beat Detroit. Tampa Bay can beat any team on any given Sunday, I believe. We're going to talk about them later. But it's going to make it a lot harder for the 5th seed to go through this playoff. So this is a very critical game. So we're probably going to see the best of these two teams, which both 14-win teams. It's insanity. So we might not see anything like this again. Yeah, I cannot wait for this game. I will be glued to the TV for this one.
Yeah, I think every NFL fan should be glued to the TV on this one. And really quick before we go over predictions, Ed, just how important is this for the Lions? The reason why I'm asking that question, and this is no disrespect to their players, but this may be their last year of having both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, their offense and defensive coordinators, because apparently they are heavily sought after head coach candidates.
Mhm.
It's tough for a team to come back the next year just as good. So I feel like the Lions really need this one. They need that number 1 seed because this could be their, I don't want to say last chance, but this could be their only chance in a bit.
Yeah, with the schematics of both of those coordinators, it's hard to replace coordinators every single year and maintain the same level of dominance that you have had over the years. Just ask Bill Belichick, because he had so many coordinators go off and flop as head coaches and then come back to him.
Yeah.
Whereas you do have some head coaches that are great about uh, developing into head coaches, and then those head coaches that were doing the developing, they get more attention by the up and comers, expecting to be able to develop into the next job that comes open for them. So you're right. It is difficult to maintain a level of dominance, especially at the NFL level, when you're changing coordinators and changing the overall game plans of each unit year after year after year, because you keep getting poached for your coordinators. But on the flip side, that's that's a good problem to have, because that also means that you've been successful over those years, and that's why people want your coordinators to start running their franchises.
Yeah. Yep, we see it time and time again, and it'll eventually happen, probably at the end of this year. But predictions, I'm going to go with the upset here. It's going to be a high scoring game. Vikings 30, Detroit Lions 24. I don't know why, but something's telling me Justin Jefferson's going to have almost 200 yards this game. The Lions don't have the best defense, and Justin Jefferson's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So give me Vikings on the upset, 30-24. Thaddeus.
Yeah, I'm also. I keep on picking against Detroit. I guess I don't like them. I don't know why. Um, but I just think the Vikings are going to win. It's going to be crazy. I think this might be even more high scoring because the Niners had a good offense and they still put up 28 points. They got shut out in the second half, basically. But this is going to be a really high scoring game. I'm I'm going to go Vikings 47-43.
That is a lot higher. Ed?
Can both of these teams lose and the Packers win the division? Is that a possibility?
Sorry, that possibility is no longer valid.
uh, well, I am going to take the Vikings. I'm going to take the Vikings because the wide receiver core of the Vikings right now is playing at such a high level that they complement each other, getting each other open, and they have just been dynamic. It's not just Justin Jefferson anymore. It is Jordan Anderson as well.
Yeah.
And when you're when you're combining that with Hawkinson taking those intermediate seam routes, when you've got Aaron Jones that just he runs slitheringly angry.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way that I can put that.
Yeah.
He just makes it happen. I think all that comes together against this beat up Detroit defense, and the Vikings will come away with the victory on this one. The average score in the last 6 games of this series has been 30 to 25. So let's just keep it there. 30 to 25 Vikings.
All righty. Uh, can't believe we all picked the Vikings, but hey, you know what? We did. Quickly, the last 2 games here. Thaddeus mentioned one of them already, and that is the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thaddeus, I'll let you kind of talk about this here because you had some high praise for Tampa Bay. You are now David Street's new best friend. So I'm going to let you take the floor here on your thoughts on the Buccaneers in this game.
The Bucks, while they lost both games to good Kirko Chains, and it was his only good games of the season, they have rebounded. They had a little bit of a midseason slump, but now they've rebounded. And Baker Mayfield, what a turnaround, and what a horrible, horrible outcome for the Cleveland Browns. Because look what they did. Now they got rid of him, and that was probably part of the help maturity for Baker Mayfield. But it's just incredible. I mean, look at this man throwing almost. He's on pace. I think he's about to reach 40 touchdowns this season. About 10 to 12 picks, and you got um, Mike Evans, who's close to reaching 1,000 yards yet again. So you best believe he's going to be getting the ball this game. Um, and they are such a dangerous team. Like I love this team so much. Like because you root for Baker. Like he had the Brown session. Like wow, the Browns might have a potential quarterback. Then they get rid of him. He goes to Carolina, has a couple bad games. Immediately zoomed across the country to the Rams, wins a game for him without even really knowing the playbook. And like, okay, this guy might be good. Tom Brady retires. He goes to Tampa Bay. Like, okay, we're not expecting much. Like a 1 year, $5 million contract. Immediately outperforms that contract. And I believe he's leading the NFL in passing touchdowns the last 2 years, or at least he's top three. So it's been an incredible team turnaround, not just for him, but I said team turnaround, but for the team as they've continued with their success after Bruce Arians and Tom Brady have left. We don't think Todd Bowles is the best coach of all time, but he's been solid enough. And this team has rebounded. They've got plenty of good players on their team. They've had a couple of weird losses, but at the same time, they can beat any team. They are the 1 out of 2 teams to beat Detroit this season, which is an incredible, incredible feat. So I'm very pleased with this Bucks team. They, I don't know if they can win the Super Bowl, but they are a dark horse to win the NFC. Because Baker's just shown this grittiness and toughness that not a lot of other QBs can exhibit. And I would not be surprised in the slightest if they beat the Packers or the Vikings in the wild card round. So you better look out for that. That's how that's how much praise I'm going to give this team. And so they definitely should take care of business versus the Saints. Last time they played the Saints, it was close until their third string running back had over 150 rushing yards. So, and either Trey Tucker, I believe it was, they scored 47 points. Now the Saints' pride might be a little bit hurt from that, so they might put up a little bit of a fight. But I think the Bucks should take care of business on this one.
It's funny you mentioned Detroit because tell you what, if Ben Johnson would come down and coach Baker and the Bucks, they can make a deep run. I think that would be a perfect marriage right there, as Ben Johnson and Baker Mayfield, just to help kind of fine tune him a little bit, because we know that he could throw the ball and he loves to throw the ball, but just making some smarter choices out there. And Ben Johnson would be great at that. Look what he's doing with Jared Goff. So that'd be a great marriage there. But yeah, Ed, I think it's easy to kind of go with Tampa Bay here over the Saints.
Mhm.
Spencer Rattler, I know he matured when he went to South Carolina, but this is the NFL. He's going to need to mature some more and just kind of learn the game. He could still be a good quarterback in the NFL, but right now he is not, and that's part of the reason why I don't see the Saints winning.
Yeah, I don't see the Saints winning either, especially coming off of that goose egg. The only goose egg that any team has had this entire football season. They are the one and only.
Yeah,
So stick that in your trivia cap there, people.
yeah,
Um, I do find it interesting that there are going to be some prop bets that are out there for those that are looking into these that are going to be massive for this weekend. And Baker Mayfield, who is a Pro Bowl snub, in my opinion, just complete Pro Bowl snub. Uh, Baker Mayfield, he has a chance to gain bonuses on his performance of up to $2.5 million this weekend, as long as he hits the criteria of being in the top 10 of, I believe it's 5 different categories, which he's on pace to do or has already made most of those. So I would definitely take Baker Mayfield for over 250 yards and over a touchdown and a half for him. While on the other side, Thaddeus, you mentioned it, Mike Evans is 85 yards away from becoming a 1,000-yard receiver again. Uh, it's just it's just like the Energizer Bunny with this guy. And if he makes 1,000 yards this year, he gets a $3 million roster bonus. So performance bonus. So I would definitely take the 93 and a half on the prop bet for Mike Evans, because you know that this is going to be a connection that will take place this weekend, and the Saints can't stop running water at this point. So uh, I'm going to put a pretty large premium uh, on the Buccaneers. I'm going to say we'll probably see somewhere in the range of 38-10.
yeah. Thaddeus, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take a not necessarily like a super blowout, but I will take a blowout enough. I'll probably take 31-7. Um, but oh gosh, I just had it too. Oh, it was about Mike Evans. I'll try to remember it later.
Yeah, I do think that Tampa will win this game pretty easily, but New Orleans will have a little fight to them. I mentioned earlier about, I hope that everyone had a safe New Year's, and unfortunately, there was tragedy that struck in New Orleans on New Year's, and it was very tough to see. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but none of the Saints players are in the area, and to those that the families that lost their lives, my thoughts and prayers are out to all you guys. And New Orleans, one thing that they've always shown is that they are a strong city, a strong organization, and they stick together. We saw it after Katrina, and they're like a band of brothers. And I expect that seeing a little bit of that this weekend as they face against Tampa. But unfortunately, the talent lacks there, so that's why I do have to go with the Bucks. I'm going to go Bucks 35, 17 in this game. So I think we're unanimous there. But once again, thoughts go out to City of New Orleans.
Yes, definitely. And I just remembered what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I remember what he was saying about Mike Evans needing take that bet on 93 yards. I definitely would too, because the only person who seemed to stop Mike Evans was Marshawn Lattimore, and he is not there anymore. So I would definitely take that bet.
Yeah. Although Marshawn Lattimore had a pretty bad opening. I want to say it was when he finally went to Washington and played, did not look the same Marshawn Lattimore that we're used to seeing. But
True.
sometimes when you have a guy's number, you got their number, and it's just how the NFL works. Last game to preview that for this weekend is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos. I'll be quicker with this one. The Chiefs are playing their bench players who never see the light of day. Carson Wentz is attests to that because he is a ginger through and through. But he is just he hasn't played in forever. I mean, it's going to be tough for him. Denver came off a very tough loss against Cincinnati where they had chances to win that game. Sean Payton, Bo Nix, they we've got that head coach quarterback relationship that I think we're going to be talking more about here in a couple years. But I'm going to go with Denver winning this game 20-10. I don't think the Chiefs can muster that much with their second and third stringers playing on offense and defense. So give me Denver there 20-10. Ed?
The question really becomes is, yes, we're going to have Carson Wentz playing, starting for the Chiefs this week, but is it going to be Carson Wentz playing, or is it going to be Carson Wentz playing? Because there's really two versions of this guy, and it's kind of like the before the knee injury or after the knee injury. Because before the knee injury, he was all world. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But when he came back after that ACL tear, that's he's just another guy. So which Carson Wentz are we going to see? Now that Andy Reid has had an entire year with him, is he going to come in and just remind everybody just who he was or is or could have been? Or is he going to be the same, just a guy, quarterback that we've seen for years? To me, he's very Chad Henne like in that respect. Uh, so he can certainly do some things. I don't think he's going to do enough with the one hand tied behind his back that we're going to see from him in this game. So I'm going to call this Denver 24-6.
Carson Wentz was the guy who walked so Nick Foles could fly. All right. His injury opened up the door for Nick Foles, the Philly special. It was tough seeing Carson Wentz go down that year because he got the Eagles to where they.
It was kind of gruesome.
Yeah, and he got the Eagles to where they were a playoff, a high caliber team. But
it was
Nick
a
Foles,
great season.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Thaddeus. Yep.
Yeah, this is. I don't expect him to do much against this Broncos defense, especially when they lost their last game. So yeah, I'm gonna take the Broncos in this one as well. You know, they're not Chiefs aren't gonna be totally serious. They will be a little bit serious because every NFL team, no matter no matter who tells you otherwise, every NFL team wants to win a game.
Yeah.
So Chiefs are going to try and bring it, but they will be playing their backups. We got Soulless Ginger, playing quarterback now. Haven't seen him in a while, but I don't know what to expect from him. Maybe it'll be good. You know, he's been in a. It's Chiefs are top tier culture, so maybe it's helped him out a little bit. But I'm not expecting too much from this game. Just like how Sam Darnold played for the 49ers at the end of last season. I have a feeling it might be like that game. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll take the Broncos 21-10, just one number off.
All right, one number off. um, that's it for the games. Really quick, I want to go over some of the snubs because the Pro Bowl rosters have been announced. And surprise, surprise, drum roll, the number one popular vote is none other than Travis Kelce and the Taylor Swifties. Go figure, no surprise. But speaking of Chiefs, there was a surprise because Patrick Mahomes did not make it to the Pro Bowl. So that was something to be talked about. And if you were to, here's a 15-1 team. Their quarterback doesn't make it to the Pro Bowl. Their tight end does, but it's all about who you know, right, Ed?
1000%. It's who you know, not exactly what you know.
Exactly. Anything that kind of stood out to you on these Pro Bowl rosters, Ed?
I quite honestly, I haven't memorized all of them.
Yeah,
So with it just coming out, uh, I'm still diving into who's going to be on the teams, and I don't even know how the format works this year. I know they're changing it yet again to try and get at least some kind of audience to
yeah,
actually care about the Pro Bowl. I To me, just leave it in Hawaii and let it be a vacation for these guys.
yeah.
But my goodness, it's this back and forth between Orlando and Hawaii just makes no sense to me. I like the skills challenge aspect of it because I football in and of itself is such a violent collision sport that you don't want to injure somebody just for the sake of a game that nobody cares about.
Sometimes things were just so much better. I remember they would skills competitions. They'd be on the beach in Hawaii having kickers kicking over a palm tree. It's not how it used to be, and I miss it. I really do. I know that everything's changed and they try to modernize it, but nothing was better than Hawaii. I wish they would bring that back. Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, when I started watching, football, and I was like, oh, Pro Bowl, that sounds cool. Like the best players come together. And I think the first year I watched it was the last year that they did tackle, or one of the last years that they did tackle. And I was like, oh, that looks really cool. But then they started rapping. I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of lame. And then they just flag football entirely these past 2 years. I'm like, well, that's kind of dumb. And I mean, I get it, player safety, but at the same time, none of the players who are playing in the Super Bowl are in the Pro Bowl. Like they get qualified for it, but they're
Yeah.
not actually there in Orlando or Hawaii, like you said. So I wish they would bring back the just good old fashioned taco football game. When was the last time someone majorly got injured in the Pro Bowl? Like when did that happen? So I want them to bring it back,
Yeah.
because the only way we get tackle Pro Bowl football games is in Madden. That's it. Madden still does it, and well, it's not a great game, but they're still doing it. Like, why can't the NFL bring that back? Because the viewership in the Pro Bowl has just dramatically dipped every year for the last 10 years. So they need to bring something back for it. Now, it's all cool for all the clips on YouTube and stuff. Those are fun. But for the actual Pro Bowl game itself, they need to bring viewership back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never forget when Sean Taylor just laid out a guy in the Pro Bowl. May he rest in peace. But that was such a great moment. It was great because no one was expecting it, and it was the Pro Bowl. But Sean Taylor did not get that memo. But lastly, just to kind of finish off here, the Ravens got 9 players and the Lions got 7. So those are 2 top playoff teams. There's a chance that there could be 9 spots open or 7 spots or 16 if they both make it to the Super Bowl. So that's something to keep an eye out on as the playoffs go on.
And just as a point, because of so many of those players from those teams being represented, there are 4 teams that do not have a single representative in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
That's the Dolphins, Jets, Titans, and Saints.
And that's saying something when you see the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill. You would think for sure someone like him would make it, but nope, not this year.
No Jalen Ramsey,
Ramsey,
no
yeah,
Waddle,
yeah,
no Tua,
yeah.
nothing.
Although you could have made an argument, Calais Campbell should have made the Pro Bowl. He was
Yeah,
awesome this year.
he's probably mad about it for sure.
At 39, I believe he's the oldest
Uh-huh.
defensive player, which is crazy. He had a really good season.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
surprised Jeffrey Simmons didn't make it either.
Yeah,
He's really good too.
there's always some snubs. It happens every year, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
gotta vote. But that's about all
Come on.
we have today, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please be sure hit that like, subscribe button, share these videos, and also hit us up in the comment section. Let us know who you think should have made the Pro Bowl. Let us know your predictions for this week. And also let us know if there's any prop bets we should keep our eye out on, because this last weekend there's a lot at stake for a lot of people's performance bonuses. So let us know if there's a prop bet or two that we should keep an eye out on. But till next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.